Hi everybody, I am Cadet Colonel Lauren Bonetti, and I go to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm studying electrical engineering, and I'm hoping to commission as a developmental engineer in the Air Force or the Space Force this May. This last May, I had the opportunity to go to Paris and Normandy, France, sponsored by the American Battle Monuments Commission, as well as Arnold Air Society. This 2-week fellowship sponsored me and one other cadet, Cadet Burke from University of Pittsburgh, to go to Paris, France, understand the American Battle Monuments Commission mission, as well as experience the Normandy American Cemetery, and kind of continue the heritage and the honor of the men and women's lives who were lost at these cemeteries. Our first stop was in Paris, France. There we went to the ABMC headquarters, met their staff, and really kind of experienced how the ABMC headquarters, overseas headquarters, functions. In Paris, France, we were also able to go to 2 ABMC sites, the first being the Suresnes American Cemetery, which is a World War I cemetery, and the second one being the Lafayette Escadrille Monument, which is kind of a hidden gem of Paris, incredibly beautiful. After that, we took a 2-hour train ride to Normandy, France, and this was kind of our main destination of the trip. After we were picked up at the train station, we immediately went to the Normandy American Cemetery, and once you're driving in, it's kind of all trees surrounding you, and you can't really see any of the headstones yet until you actually go into the cemetery and walk around the corner, and then all of a sudden it hits you, this sea of white crosses overlooking Omaha Beach and the ocean beyond. And that's when you start to realize just how many lives were lost on D-Day and its extreme significance. At the cemetery, we were able to help out the horticulture crew, cleaning the headstones, as well as placing the flags, the American flag and the French flag, in preparation for the Memorial Day ceremonies. We were also able to participate in guided tours, meet the cemetery guides, really learn some deep personal stories about the soldiers and the men and women who are buried in the cemetery, as well as participate in next of kin visits, and really understand how the cemetery functions at all levels. The Normandy superintendent, as well as the assistant superintendent, could not have been more welcoming, and I'm extremely grateful for how they treated us when we arrived at the cemetery. My favorite part of the experience was the Operation Benjamin ceremony, which happened the day after the Memorial Day ceremonies. And Operation Benjamin is an organization that looks into soldiers who wrote down a different religion than Judaism on their intake forms because of the Jewish prosecution and the treatment that they would receive if they were found out to be a POW with Judaism as their main religion. So what this organization does is they research the family history and they correct those wrongs of the past, and they will replace those soldiers' Christian crosses with the Jewish Star of David, which is a much more representative symbol of their religion. So during this ceremony, we saw a soldier's cross being replaced with the Star of David and his next of kin family members there. It was a very powerful and moving ceremony. Some other special events, special locations that we got to go to was Le Combe, a German cemetery, to see a different perspective, as well as the British American Cemetery, and a few other locations like Mount Saint-Michel, and in Paris we were able to see the Arc de Triomphe, the Notre Dame, as well as the Eiffel Tower. So overall, I would encourage anybody who is considering to apply to this program. It was truly changed my perspective of being in the military. When I first joined ROTC, it was a lot about the academic opportunities, the financial opportunities. But after going to Normandy and seeing all of the men and women who died in a fight for what we are currently fighting for today, truly changed how I view being in the military, and it really emphasized the importance of this mission. So overall, again, I cannot emphasize enough how grateful and how thankful I am to the American Battle Monuments Commission as well as Arnold Air Society. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to apply so we can continue remembering and honoring the men and women, not only in Normandy, but in American cemeteries worldwide. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Cadet John Burke. I am an AS400 student at the University of Pittsburgh, Air Force ROTC Det 730. And this past summer, I had the wonderful opportunity of being a American Battle Monuments Commission Fellow. Myself and another cadet, Lauren Benetti from Marquette, had the wonderful pleasure of spending 14 days in France, starting in Paris and working our way to the Normandy region, where we got to spend a lot of time at the Normandy American Cemetery, all around the D-Day sites, as well as the local towns, all the monuments in the region, and lots of cemeteries. It was a phenomenal experience. I can happily talk about it more in depth, and I'm sure I will. But to put it very succinctly, the program was very, very eye-opening. To be an American in, first off, a foreign land, and to see people that will cross their country to go see an American site that has very little to do with them, the people that are actually buried there, other than the history and really what it represents and what it means to them. To be an American there and the things that people will talk to you about and tell you about, and how the things that Americans did overseas has personally impacted them, it's indescribable. So in Paris, we started out with a tour of the ABMC headquarters and seeing some of the logistic workings that go top down for some of these events that they put on, and how they manage all of their sites and memorials. It was definitely a good introduction. I got to meet some really great people and trying to just get the ball rolling right away. From there, myself and Lauren, we went to 2 sites that day, starting with the Serene American Cemetery, which is right outside of the city, and has World War I and World War II burials. And it really set the pace for the rest of the trip. Going to one of these sites for the first time, especially if you're not really familiar with it before, is very eye-opening. Hearing some of the stories of the people that are buried there and what they did in their time is really fascinating and heartfelt, because it really means a lot to the people that work there and to the ABMC and eventually to you, which is the cool part. It's a beautiful cemetery. It sits on top of a large hill. You can see the city from there. You can see the Eiffel Tower, and having something like that be so close to such a major spot in the world without ever really hearing about it definitely was surprising to me. After that, we visited the Lafayette Escadrille Memorial and Crypt, which is a newer ABMC site commemorating the American aviators and the French aviators of World War I that fought in the Lafayette Escadrille. And they've got a small little museum there, which is very unique. They've got a plane sawed in half, which is definitely a great way of making use of the space. And the actual memorial itself sits on top of a crypt with phenomenal stained glass that tells the story of the Lafayette Escadrille coming over from America, fighting in World War I, and specifically over certain French cities. It's very, very, very cool. Very pretty, and it's very neat to see the story be told in such a way. 2 things that stood out to me and really stuck with me a lot more than that, and those were next of kin visits and an Operation Benjamin headstone exchange. So a next of kin visit is when someone who's buried at the cemetery, their next of kin, right? Their next of kin comes to visit, and they're usually prepared, sometimes on the spot, but if given advance warning, the tour group team will will assemble a whole package of all of that individual's history, everything that they have at the site, photos, records, whatever they can, and they'll put it all together, grab a bunch of stuff, and take you to a special room, take you through the visitor center, and then take you out to go see the headstone. Specifically, the one that stuck with me was a guy I met from Chicago. It was him and his wife, and when you spend 14 days in France and you don't speak any French, to find another American who just come overseas to go exactly where you are, they're happy to see you. They're happy to hear your American accent, and we're kind of happy to see them. But at the same time, it kind of hits a little harder because this guy could be my neighbor. This guy could have been my cousin. He was a younger dude. It was, I believe, his great-grandfather, not great-grandfather, I think it was his great-uncle buried in the cemetery, and traveled all this way, all the way to France, just come visit the site for the first time. And watching him go through the experience that I had on the first day, the first time I showed up to the cemetery, but tenfold, because that's his lineage. That's someone that is in his family buried there. It's not something that you can really describe, but to witness was really something special. Operation Benjamin does their own private research into family records and family testimony to go back, find those individuals that may or may not, or that may have identified as Jewish before the war, but then lied about it on their service paperwork to avoid persecution or discrimination. And they put together a huge case. They say, we believe that this guy was an active practicing Jew, and we think that you guys should change his headstone from a Latin cross to a Star of David. And all checks out, goes through the proper processes, and approved. Then they changed the headstone, put a new one in, and we were there to witness one of those. We went on a bunch of exciting little day trips here and there. We would get, Isni caramels are very famous in the region. We got lots of stuff revolving around apples, I don't know. It was wholeheartedly a very cultural experience, above all. While you're interacting with Americans in the ABMC, you're mainly interacting with French people. And I've never been to mainland Europe, I said that, but that part was really exciting and very cool. Seeing some of these places, just seeing how people live across the world, very different from America. So if you have the opportunity to apply in the future, I highly recommend that you do. It's something that I'll never forget, and I hope you get the absolute pleasure of joining me as a fellow in the past or in the future. Thank you. Bye.